Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the In a Nutshell, the Big Ten podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowles, and today I'm joined by Joe Mead. Joe, college football week one is come and gone. A couple Big Ten games, a lot of Big Ten teams in action against non-Big Ten teams. But before we go through the games, any big takeaways from the first weekend here of college football?
Yeah, and I'll lead you guys to our website again. We're starting to post articles more consistently now, so I'm not going to try to spoil anything that I'm going to write about or post tomorrow. But I think Sean's actually going to get us into the first segment, which will kind of give away one big storyline. Sean, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, unfortunately for the Big Ten, a couple of the bigger games this week were teams in other conferences. But the first game Thursday night was between two Big Ten teams and two that we both think might be at the bottom of the barrel or at least not the top. Minnesota beat Nebraska 13-10. Not really what Nebraska needed, but Minnesota's able to win it at home. This game was pretty even for the most part. Nebraska actually had the ball as much as Minnesota and more yards than Minnesota, but at the end of the day, they come away with a loss.
Yeah, Sean, just more of the same for Nebraska. And you said earlier, not what Nebraska needed, but definitely what Nebraska fans and Husker Nation is used to, because this has just been more of the same story. I read a headline from a Nebraska website that said, new coach, same story. So, under Scott Frost, the narrative in 2021 and especially part of 2022 was they can't win these one-score games. And this is this one in particular was shocking. Nebraska played a really sloppy first half and frankly should have had a 7-3 lead at the end of the half. But Jeff Sims, the new Georgia Tech quarterback, who I alluded to in the offseason recap, he's going to be a big piece for Nebraska. But Thursday night, he was a big piece in the worst way, turning the ball over three times, throwing a deadly interception at the end of the half, right in the red zone, the biggest no-no in football, and then throwing an interception. Nebraska had a 10-3 lead. They put in a running back who was rumored to have fumbling issues during the offseason. He fumbles. Minnesota converts every third and fourth down the next drive. Get a toe drag touchdown from Daniel Jackson. Then Nebraska is still in prime position in a 10-10 ball game. Drive it to the right side of the field, and Sims just gets read by the safety. And Fleck and Minnesota played it perfectly. They wind the clock down, take the game-winning field goal. And if you're a Nebraska fan, I'd be very worried. We'll touch more on this on our next episode. But they go to Colorado, who's probably the hottest and most talked about team in college football. And Nebraska is staring dead in the face of an 0-2 start. And Matt Rule is under no pressure whatsoever. But 0-2 in Lincoln, he knows very well as a Joe Pa disciple. Some programs are not very patient. They're very nice in Lincoln, Nebraska, but patience is definitely not going to be a virtue. So a lot of pressure for them. And yeah, Sean.
It just seems like, four turnovers. It's just putting your defense in a tough spot, and they still only give up 13 points. But, Colorado, really, really impressed with them. They're probably going to lose. I'd be surprised if they could turn that around. But next game Friday night, we got an all-Michigan battle between the Central Michigan Chippewas, is it?
Yep.
And
Fire
then
up chips.
Michigan State Spartans, 31-7 Spartans. Not much here. They were only up by 3 at the half, but they shut them out in the second half, take care of business, and move on.
Yeah, this was a very, very intense first half for the Spartans. In fact, it was a very intense, I would say, 29 and a half minutes until they retook the lead. Sean, Michigan State's start off the game hot. Nathan Carter, their new transfer running back from UConn with a lot of expectations, ran right down to the Central Michigan, almost 35-yard line to start the game. So you're thinking, oh, here come the Spartans, going to be a dominating game. But their offensive line after that really couldn't get a lot of push on Central's defenders. Central Michigan drove down the ball, definitely left some points on the board, definitely got overzealous on certain plays. And they were leading 7-3. And Michigan State's offense, I heard from a few people in the stadium, there were a few scattered boos going into the half until Michigan State retook the lead. Noah Kim, it was his first start. Definitely had the jitters the first half. Second half, settled down, threw some nice 50-50 balls, and got his confidence in. But a lot of Michigan State fans did not come out of this game satisfied. Uh, really did not look authoritative. 31-7 the final, but it was definitely in doubt for three quarters. And Michigan State isn't going to be tested until week 3, and we'll get more into that into our next episode. But yeah, didn't learn too much encouraging about the Spartans. I know they're dealing with some injuries on their interior D line and rumors of other injuries on the team. But again, not too much to panic about, but not too much to be excited about for the Spartans.
Yeah, it's. I think it's different in other sports. I don't think you learn much in football when you play a team that's much very inferior to you, and I think they might be leaving that game a little bit less excited about things than when they got there. But we'll turn the page to Saturday, Joe. I believe you were in there, right? Eastern Carolina heads up to the Big House and gets pretty thoroughly blown out, 32-3 Wolverines. They did not cover the spread, but the game was over relatively quickly, 23-0 at halftime. But obviously no Harbaugh on the sideline there, but anything else that we should talk about from that game?
No, I'll just go over the quick storylines. I got my free Harbaugh shirt right here. So definitely the second offensive series Michigan did the put the four up, got in a trade formation, a signature Harbaugh, just to honor him. One thing that did not honor him was the running performance. East Carolina 20th best rushing defense in college football last year, so they definitely wanted to make J.J. McCarthy earn the victory over them, and that he did. 26 of 30, 280 plus yards, and he looked the prevailing thing I got from him. He looked a lot more comfortable than he did last year. He didn't have a full offseason as the starting quarterback, trading reps with Cade and being injured most of the spring in 2022. This year, he had a full year of being the face of the program, quite frankly. And he delivered game one, looked a lot more comfortable, again, against East Carolina, I know, but mechanics looked better, didn't panic, threw some really nice balls. It really could have gotten 28 to 30. Two of those balls were dropped. And only one thing with JJ, he's got to stop fumbling on the goal line in critical situations. That's the one takeaway that he knows he needs to work on. And other than that, didn't learn too much about Michigan, didn't get too much pressure, but East Carolina was throwing the ball out quick, averaging only 4 yards a passing attempt. So, yeah, nothing concerning for the Wolverines, encouraging from McCarthy. And, yeah, that's all I have on the Wolverines.
Obviously, very close to a shutout. The field goal for the Pirates did come as time expired in the game, but, this might not look a whole lot different than the Spartans win, but game was over relatively quickly here rather than not really being the case the other way around. So we'll move again to a team that has found themselves in the top 25 in the Big Ten with former Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara at the helm, and it's Iowa. They hosted Utah State. They beat them by 10. They're favored by a whole lot more, but Iowa fans that I know are at least encouraged about this one. They had just such poor quarterback play and offense in general over the last couple of years, but they get 24 points. They get a couple touchdowns from Cade, and they go 1-0.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I'll mention is 24 might not be enough for Brian Ferentz, who does have to average 25.5 points per game to keep his job, according to that contract. But getting back to the serious topic, Cade looked decently comfortable. This is what I'd call a signature Cade McNamara September performance. If people do remember his 2021 season, he didn't really settle in and get into a groove until the beginning of October when Michigan played at Wisconsin in 21. Threw a touchdown to Eric Gall, an all too familiar image for a lot of other Big Ten teams who played Michigan. But Iowa, just a very workmanlike victory. The offense did struggle at times. The O-line probably didn't have their performance they wanted to. But as I alluded to, we're going to go into our next episode. They have their first real test next week at Iowa State. Big rivalry game at 3:30. So, a lot to work on for Iowa's O-line. Definitely had a better offensive performance than last year, but not saying much. So, Iowa, solid, but definitely needs to amp it up and in a hurry.
So the next one would be the only Big Ten team that played a non-Big Ten team and lost. That'd be Fresno State going into Ross-Ade Stadium in West Lafayette. They beat Purdue 39-35. Um, I mean, Purdue's only favored by a couple, but this is a big shock to a team that at least had some quiet confidence this year. They, giving up 39 points is probably the biggest concern, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Ryan Walters, first game as a head coach, not going to rip him at all. Definitely installed a new defensive system. And Purdue was one of the worst defensive teams in the country last year, despite having that phenomenal offense led by O'Connell and Chucky Jones. And the offense played well, 35 points. Hudson Card, first performance, didn't play his greatest game, but not attributing any of the loss on him, mainly the defense. Makavi had a decent game, but Purdue, they got to figure out this defense. And luckily, the biggest thing I'll emphasize for Purdue is they're the defending West champions. This didn't really take away any momentum from repeating as the West champ. So nothing too concerning for the Boilermakers in terms of the West race. Definitely got to tighten up the defense, but no reason to hit the panic button for this season or in the future. I think Walter still just has a long way to go. And like any new coaching job where the heart and soul of the program leaves, it's going to be a long battle.
So the next game, head up to Memorial Stadium at Indiana. Ohio State went in there as 30-point favorites, and they were only able to win 23-3. Are you a little worried? Well, you're not worried because you're a Michigan fan, but do Ohio State fans have reason to worry about only scoring 23 against one of the doormats of the Big Ten?
Yeah, starting on Indiana and on my off-season in a nutshell podcast, I mentioned Tom Allen has the hottest seat in the country, not only because of the performance over the last 2 years, Sean, but because this year the team doesn't look much better. And Ohio State offense normally comes out slugs and does really well. They did not particularly impress anyone. Marvin Harrison did get injured in the game. He is fine. But the fact him and Abuka had under 100 combined receiving yards is a huge concern. Probably one of the best receiver duos in the country. And as it comes to Kyle McCord, the elephant in the room is a lot of Ohio State fans have seen him and mop up performance and been unimpressed. A lot of pundits around the country who've watched film, including Joel Platt, Josh Pate, do have reason for concern for McCord. And this could be a very big issue. And that's probably a big overreaction because Ryan Day's track record of developing quarterbacks is very good. But maybe it's not Kyle McCord. Ohio State doesn't have a test until week 4 at Notre Dame. By then, they have to figure out whether McCord's the guy or Devin Brown, who brings an elusive playmaking with his feet, is going to be starting that week. So nothing too concerning for the Buckeyes. I know the quarterback is the most important position probably in sports, but the right guy is at the helm to manage that. And reason for worry based on this game, yes. Reason for worry in the long run, probably not. But I reserve the right to change that answer based on a week 4 performance.
So the next game will be Buffalo at number 19 Wisconsin. The Badgers won 38-17. This game was not really close. In the second half, it was only 14-10 Wisconsin at halftime, but Wisconsin scored a couple touchdowns in the third quarter to kind of end it there. Buffalo did have 5. Where is it? They did have 316 total yards. Wisconsin had 500 total yards, which is pretty impressive. 23 first downs. Obviously, the play of the running back was the biggest thing here. 157 yards and 2 touchdowns for Malusi and 141 yards and 2 touchdowns for Allen. That's a pretty impressive double punch there from the Badgers running backs. But anything else from this one?
Yeah, Urban Meyer was on Big Ten yesterday talking about how Wisconsin's trying to be Wisconsin plus, meaning they're gonna always have those 2 great running backs with Malusi and Braylon Allen, but they brought in Phil Longo for a reason. That's to be an elusive passing attack as well, and that's one thing Wisconsin's lacked. Even in the 2017 and 2019 teams at Wisconsin that went to the Big Ten title game, they never had a serious threat as a quarterback passing. They haven't had one, in my estimation, since Russell Wilson in 2011. So the fact that they're trying to do that, they looked more balanced. Definitely an encouraging sign. wouldn't say this means it's going to continue for the rest of the year. And like many Big Ten teams, Sean, they're going to be tested next week. They go to Washington State. Definitely going to be weird with the time difference for them. So we'll touch more on that later. But a lot of reasons for excitement for Wisconsin. But I would hold the phone on the crazy excitement until I see a little more from this offense.
So the next game was an all Maryland battle between Towson and Maryland. Maryland got up early and never looked back here. They won 38-6. Tagovailoa had 4 touchdowns in the first half. He ended up getting out of the game quickly thereafter, but certainly from a stat line perspective, one of the more impressive quarterback performances in the Big Ten. And Maryland have kind of stuttered there in the bottom of the conference. They're in the East, so not really sure how high they can get, but they got to have at least a little confidence that they should be able to beat out teams of maybe Indiana and Rutgers and maybe even a Michigan State if they falter a couple times.
Yeah, Sean, this is typical September Maryland. That there's always that joke on local Big Ten media that September Maryland's really good. They have a lot of great playmakers. Tagovailoa, Hemby, the receiving core has always been stellar. Trademark of a Mike Locksley team, and just a very fun fact that the who no one knows who the play callers are between Locksley, Gaddis, and Kevin Sumlin. A lot of very familiar names there. So definitely going to be if they stay healthy, how they do my part. I much of this game, and with those play callers, Sublin, Gaddis, and Locksley, definitely a lot of weapons both in the coaching room and on the playing field. The real question is how consistent these guys can be, how healthy these guys can be, and whether they take this next step. But playing Towson and dominating them does not indicate much to anyone, including the Maryland fan base.
So the next game on the schedule, Penn State hosted West Virginia from the Big 12. They were not really challenged. They were up by only 7 at halftime, but they ended up kind of bringing it to them in the second half. They win 38-15. Certainly an impressive performance from the Nittany Lions. They were favored by a lot, as West Virginia is one of the worst teams in the Big 12, but certainly a different sort of level of competition for Penn State, really compared to anybody else who played out of conference, I would say.
Yes, I would only push back saying that Neil Brown, the West Virginia coach, may also share a very hot seat similar to Tom Allen, but nonetheless a Big 12 team, one that did hold their own in the first half. I don't know if that was more of a tribute to West Virginia or Penn State knocking off the rust. Storyline here is Drew Aller. He is, I'll come out and say it, he might be the most important player in the Big Ten East race. If he consistently performs the way he did on Saturday night, Sean, he could be the key to Penn State overtaking Michigan and Ohio State. And it's all going to come down to him. He looked very poised, made some very nice throws, had one very nice deep ball, but they were also easing him into the offense, giving him 10-yard out routes to certain receivers. So he looked very good, but not going to judge too much off one game. Penn State's had a propensity under Franklin, as we've known, to lose certain games they shouldn't. But, all credit to them right now. And long way to go for them, but all signs are encouraging.
And the final game on Saturday was between Toledo and Illinois. And Illinois avoided disaster with a field goal as time expired. This game was always probably going to be a little closer than some of these other ones, but my goodness, Illinois kind of avoids disaster here. And when you look back at it at the end of the season, you probably won't remember, but this could have been a disastrous start to the season for the Illini.
Yeah, and disastrous, I don't know what to attribute to. I think, as we mentioned earlier, the fact they lost Ryan Walters as their defensive coordinator. I don't know if that's what showed up, but Toledo moving the ball way too easily on Illinois. Luckily, I give the performance of the day to Luke Altmaier, the Ole Miss transfer quarterback, who did start that Sugar Bowl when Matt Corral famously went down. Luke Altmaier, very clutch. Illinois, very long way to go. As seen on defense, they do play at Kansas this coming week, so a lot to fix. Kansas is one of the more intriguing college football, so Illinois has to figure. Altmaier does need to be a little more consistent on offense if they want to pull a semi upset in Lawrence, Kansas.
Both teams did turn over the ball once. Toledo did have more yards than the Illini, 416 to 374 and 27 first downs to 20, and they possessed the ball for longer. So there's a lot of ways that Illinois probably could have lost this game, but defensively, a lot of issues. 28 points to Toledo. Definitely something that they're going to have to work on. And the final Big Ten game on Sunday between two Big Ten teams here. Northwestern came to Jersey to face Rutgers, and Rutgers did what they had to, and they took care of business, winning 24-7. They're up 24-0 until a touchdown with 19 seconds left by Northwestern. But obviously, we've talked quite a bit about the issues at Northwestern and how they're, I don't know if really in kind of a holding period right here, but this game was supposed to be at least a little closer. Rutgers favored by 5. They took care of business. Good start to the season for the Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, Rutgers, the biggest thing I've seen is the addition of Kurt Rock. I think, yeah, that's say ascension to being the full starter a lot easier. He looked kind of as AJ, but moved around the pocket better, made a lot better decisions. Last year he had a big percent intercepts, and you know, biggest thing I could say for Rutgers is they got to keep Wimsack's jersey clean, let him continue to make good decisions, and 2 weeks before they play Virginia Tech, so on the right path. Getting 1-0, not only on the season but in the conference, is a huge morale boost for a team looking to go bowling. That's a huge deal for Rutgers.
So that's all the games in the Big Ten. Let's move into our next segment here, Joe.
Yeah, our next segment we have mail from fans. These are usually between football and basketball, since this is for usually both fans. First question is for Sean. This one's a very difficult one. I'll give him 10 seconds to think about it. Uh, of any fan base in the conference, who do you think has the most combined confidence for football and basketball this coming fall and winter?
That's very difficult because if you think about it,
I know.
at least the top 3 football teams in the conference probably going to be near the bottom of the basketball standings, and the top couple teams in basketball probably going to be near the bottom in football. So finding somebody in the middle, there's probably going to be a couple programs that have 2 top 25 teams, but no real double national champion contenders. So it's probably going to be picking one of those teams that's in the middle. Maybe Wisconsin or an Iowa, teams that can make the tournament in basketball and also make or consistently kind of stay in the top 25 this year for football. But there's really not a good answer to that question. I would have to go with Wisconsin or Iowa, unless I'm missing something here. Couple of teams maybe
Yeah,
just better than average in the conference, maybe towards the higher ends of average both ways, but that's about as good as it gets when you combine the sports.
I could say Michigan, Ohio State, simply because the excitement for football is so high, and both Holtman and Howard have shown propensities to make the tournament. And I say that shakily because both were not, frankly, very, very close in basketball this last season. And yeah, no, a very difficult question. One, I'd like our viewers to argue and send us their answers. So
And
I'd be very interested.
it
But
probably
yeah,
depends on which sport you value more, because an
yeah,
Ohio State team that goes to the college football playoff and makes the NCAA tournament, if you care more about football, then that's a real and casually watch the basketball team, then you'd say, okay, great, both of our teams are in the playoffs, both of our teams are doing well. But if you care more about basketball, you have a Michigan State team that goes to the Final Four and a football team that is above 500 and maybe cracks the top 25, then you say that was then it could be Michigan State. So there's probably 5 or 6 genuine options for that question. We can go back and answer that in April when both seasons are over, and we can rank how the athletic programs performed combining the sports, trying to do a 50-50 weight dispersion there.
Yeah, Sean, a very tough question from our viewer. Second one's for me, and I'll go into it quickly because, frankly, I don't want to talk about Michigan basketball. Joe, how do you think the addition of Lee Aliyah, and I don't know if I pronounced it, but Michigan blogs have their own pronunciation. He's just needs to be honest. He did well in the U19 World Cup. Gives them a true backup big man to Terrace Reed, the true scorer on the go more. It's more as we get closer to basketball season. But final is for Sean. We will take more questions on our next cast that will be released very shortly. Question for Sean. Are you even watching Indiana football games besides the big ones, i.e. Ohio State this week?
No, not even the big ones. I've never been a huge... I've actually been to a game, but not in years. No, I just never really been into it. I think I have alerts on for the team, but I'm much more of a college football watcher than an Indiana football watcher. While I am also a college basketball watcher, I won't miss a game unless I really have to. But I will definitely miss Indiana football games this year until they start proving otherwise.
Yeah, and to end the segment, the specific question for me, Joe, you should give me 2 takeaways. So I'll give them 2 of the 3 takeaways. I'll give them ones that are more surprising. First one, probably I'll say, is Rutgers looks very impressive. If there's going to be any surprise team not to win the East or the conference, I will preface it saying that. But maybe Rutgers winning 7-8 games, which would be very shocking. The performance they put on was very encouraging. Their offense has really been what's held them back these first 3 years of the second stint of Shiano. So that would be my first. And then my second would be the media excitement to see Ohio State struggle at quarterback is kind of ridiculous. Again, coming from a Michigan fan, I think it's very overreactive. And frankly, had this been any other big program, and let's just say the SEC, I don't think anyone would have this kind of nuclear reaction. So we're going to definitely touch more on some of these storylines as we preview the Week 2 games on our next cast. But Sean, do you have any other final thoughts?
I think just a couple programming notes. We're going to try and do at least 2 or 3 of these a week when both sports are going. Obviously, we talk about the Big Ten in general, but with just football on now, we'll probably do a recap and a preview for each week. Won't go more than maybe a half an hour longer. And then when basketball season does start and football gets to the end of the year, we're definitely going to try and segregate those because we can get really lost in going back and forth, and that'll be really tough for the viewer to kind of hang along. But mailbag at the end, we'll always kind of do that and answer questions on both. But for now, we're probably going to keep these to football and then do another basketball conference preview, and then when basketball starts, we'll try not to mix it up too much to keep it easier for the viewers. But coming soon in the next couple days with the Week 2 preview for college football in the Big Ten. So thanks everybody for listening, and be sure to check the social media platforms. Probably not going to do Week 2 preview live, but eventually we will get to live, and then we'll be able to answer your questions right there in the moment. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.